Baxter Dews has given Paul Morel the beating of his life. Paul was pretty hurt. He was almost unconsciousness. The icy water helped to bring him back to himself. Then, when he went at home, everybody was in bed. His face was pale and smeared with blood, almost like a dead man. In the morning, he explained to his mother that Baxter Hughes had hurt his shoulder, but it was just a bicycle accident. Meaning the servant gave Paul some tea, and his mother, Mrs. Morel, called the doctor. Paul has a dislocated shoulder. Clara and Miriam went to visit him, but Clara seemed a stranger for him. Soon, Paul was able to work again, but now there was a constant sickness at his heart. He went to Clara, but seemed as if nobody was there. Paul was mostly into the company of men. His mother was ill, distant, and quiet. Mrs. Morel was attending a doctor in Nottingham, and the doctor said that his heart and digestion were wrong. But he approved Mrs. Morel to visit her daughter Annie at Sheffield. On the other hand, Paul and his friend Newton went to Blackpool. The two men enjoyed themselves for 4 days, and Paul bought a collar of real lace for his mother. Nevertheless, Mrs. Morel was in bed. Mother, mother, Paul said, and stroked his hair slowly with her thin hands. He felt his blood was melting into tears, and he cried in terror and pain. "What is it?" he asked. "Only a bit humor, my boy," she said. "It started yesterday. I had pain, but no worse than the one I had had at home," she said. After dinner, when the little maid has gone, Paul asked to his sister Annie, "It is really a tumor?" And Annie began to cry and said that when Mrs. Morel pain started, Leonard ran for Dr. Ansel. And she said that Mrs. Morel had had pain for months and nobody had looked at her, and she felt guilty. In the afternoon, Paul went to the doctor, and the doctor explained that it could be a tumor which had formed in the membrane, but he was not sure, and it could be cancer too. All right, then Paul went upstairs to help his mother. Mrs. Morel wore an old rose dress that Leonard has given her, and Paul said that she looked pretty. She was lying frail, and her face looked as she were dead, with blue lips. She saw him lovingly, and she felt sorry for him. He still continued around without ceasing. "Don't cry. I don't want you to make a problem of it," he said. "But no, mother," said Paul. "You have to rest and be quiet, and you will get better soon," he said. But his heart seemed to be ripping slowly in anything. "All right," murmured Annie. "Of course," said Mrs. Morel. Paul sat down and told Mrs. Morel about Blackpool. A day or two after, he went to see Dr. Jensen in Nottingham to arrange for a consultation. Paul had practically no money in the world, but he could borrow. Paul went to the public consultation on Saturday morning. The waiting room was full of poor women who sat patiently on the bench around the wall. Paul thought of his mother in her little black costume waiting likewise. Paul asked if he could see the doctor immediately he came. The doctor was a 40 good-looking brown-skinned widow man. He was an specialist in women's ailments. Paul told his name and his mother, but the doctor didn't remember. Number 46M, said the nurse, and the doctor looked at the case in his book. Dr. Ansel was going to write you a letter, said Paul. Ah, yes, replied the doctor, drawing the letter from his pocket. What is your father? He asked. He's a coal miner. And you? I'm a clerk in Jordan's appliance factory. Go to Sheffield, he said, putting the tip of his finger together and smiling with his eyes. Agnes, thank you, said Paul, flushing and rising. Will you come tomorrow? Tomorrow Sunday? Yes. Can you tell me what time there is a train in the afternoon? There's a train, said Paul. The Western Bound train. The doctor made a note of it. Then they shook hands. Paul went to his house to see his father, who was in charge of Minnie. Paul found Morel digging in the garden. The two men shook hands. The father was afraid of the mention of his wife. The two men went indoors. Paul ate in silence. His father, with his hairy hand and a sleeve rolled up, sat in the archchair. How is she? Asked the miner. She can sit up, she can be carried down for tea, said Paul. Was the Nottingham doctor said. He's going tomorrow to have an examination of her. If he be guy, that's a 30 penny, I'm thinking. A guinea, said the miner breathlessly. I can pay that, said Paul. We must say what the doctor said tomorrow, said Paul. Signing deeply in the house, Paul thought that his father looked forlorn, lost, and all. You will have to go to see her next week, Father, and I'm going to write you what the doctor said tomorrow. The examination didn't take long. Annie, Arthur, Leonard, and Paul were sitting in the parlor anxiously. The doctor came down. It may be a tumor, but we must wait and see, said Dr. Jensen. And if it is, said Annie, can you swell it away? Probably, said the doctor. I'm sorry, but Mrs. Morel is so ill. But we must see what we can do. There can be any operation? No, said the doctor. And even if there, her heart couldn't stand it. Is her heart risky? Asked Paul. Yes, you must be careful with her. Paul carried his mother downstairs. She lay simply like a child. I was afraid, she said. He thinks it's only a tumor, cried Annie to her mother. The next day, Paul kisses her mother before go to work. Shall you be late? She murmured. I'm gone, he said. Mother, won't you any worse? No, my son. You promise me? Yes, I promise you. I won't be any worse. But Paul ran to the station, crying all the way. In the afternoon, he went a walk with Clara. They sat in the little wood where the bluebells were standing. He took Clara's hands, and she said, she will never be better. Try to forget it there, she said. And then Clara pressed him to her breast and rocked her like if he were a child. He had to keep his mind occupied, and Clara was a way of occupying his mind. On the Saturday, Walter went to Sheffield. He wiped his eye with his handkerchief. How you gonna write? Asked his wife. as it were an effort to talk to him. Then she gave him a few instructions. He sat, looking at her, almost as she were a stranger for him. Mrs. Morel didn't change too much. He stayed at Sheffield for 2 months, but she wanted to go home. So they got a motor car from Nottingham because she was too ill to travel by train. Under the blue sky, they can see that she was dying. Everybody came to see Mrs. Morel. "How do you do, Mrs. Matthew? How are you, Mr. Harrison?" Mrs. Morel asked. Morel wanted to carry her indoors, but he was too old. Arthur took her as she were a child. They sat her in a big deep chair where her rocking chair used to stand. "Don't think I don't like your house, Annie," she said, "but it's nice to be at home again." "And where is Minnie?" she asked. And there was a lovely rainbow of sunflowers in the garden. "There are my sunflowers," Mrs. Morel said.